Hello, friends, both old and new. I'm John St. Baptiste, and welcome back to Believe. This is a show where we, every Wednesday, talk about generally the works of Neil Gaiman, but once in a while, a few other authors, a few other screen writers, and some of their work. But we generally focus on Gaiman. That's what we're doing right now, and we're talking about his Norse mythology. Uh, as I talked about extensively last week, I love the fact that he took a lot of the classic Norse myths and gave his own spin on them, which is what I think that all of mythology is about, is making certain stories current to the reader, as opposed to being all this dried up, for lack of a better term, archaic stuff that, unless one is significantly interested in, they've probably not read. So this makes it a little more accessible, a little more modern day. And we're talking about chapters 4 through 6, which quite a bit focus on Loki. Very interesting character. For those of you who have a Marvel background and have not read this, or not familiar with traditional Norse mythology, Loki's made out to be much more of a villain in those stories than he is in Loki's complicated because he's a trickster god, and we'll be getting into that today. A lot of the motifs of trickster gods. So we do have a few people in here. Catherine Harding, welcome. Good to see you. Bear Island Josh, who has a holiday present coming his way. We have Maura Lee. Bron Holler was here for a moment, but she has to work today. My one spanner that rules them all has to go off and work. It's the weird thing with the time zones now, because they change differently in different parts of the world. I don't have a problem with like the daylight savings and all that. It's just that it's at different times in different places, and that makes things extremely inconvenient for a lot of people. But hey, who am I to judge the world economy? Not my place. So we're talking about Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology today. First off, I would like to ask if anybody had any thoughts from last week's stream when we spoke about the first 3 chapters, which were pretty much the creation story. Oh, Catherine, you're at work right now? I won't tell anybody, I promise. It'll be our secret. But if anybody had any thoughts or ideas or things they'd like to propose about the creation story that encompasses the first 3 chapters, please, I would love to hear your feedback and your thoughts. By the way, while you're coming up with those, I'm guessing on a couple channels in the next few days. I believe tonight I'm going to be on Mackenzie L. Burns' channel. I think we're doing the next round of Derriere Debates, which is where we debate the best butts in all of Westeros from both the book and the show. I think that's going on tonight. I have to find out. There have been some scheduling issues with pretty much everybody lately, but those things happen. And then tomorrow I will be on Johnny B. Creasy's channel to talk about episode 4 of Watchmen. I don't know if anybody here's been keeping up on that, but I think it's a pretty good show. Some people don't really care for it. I like it quite well. um, especially for anyone who may have read it. I think it's, in its own way, remaining pretty true to the book. Well, it doesn't look like anybody has anything to bring up from last week's topics, so we'll go right into this. And we have the story about why the gods have all their gifts. And this one in here is titled The Treasures of the Gods. So, one of the things that I love is right here by the second paragraph. It gives a representation of Thor that's much more accurate to the source material than what you see in, say, a Marvel film. Thor's dumb. He's dumber than a rock. I mean, look at this. He wakes up. His wife has no hair, and that's her big thing. Is her hair, her beautiful golden locks. And she wakes up and she doesn't have any hair. And Thor woke and stared at sleeping Sif. He scratched his beard, then he tapped his wife with a huge hand. "What happened to you?" he asked. I just think it's hilarious because Thor is thick as a post. I mean, he really is. He has his kind of clever moments, but generally he's thick as a post. And he immediately jumps to the conclusion that it was Loki. And she's like, "Why do you say that?" And he says, "When something goes wrong, the first thing I always think of is Loki's fault. It saves a lot of time." Apparently, he's not that bright, but he can drink a portion of the ocean. Uh, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, if I were in a barroom brawl, I'd definitely want Thor on my side, but he's kind of like, he's pretty dumb in general. I actually, I know that most of the people here have followed things on American Gods. I like how he's portrayed there. Is not an absolute idiot, but just not the most clever of people, and somebody who, with best intentions, can be led aside. But right now, he's just pissed off at Loki, which Thor spends a lot of time pissed off at Loki. So he goes, he looks for Loki, and he threatens him, and Loki's like, "What are you talking about? I don't know." And finally, he realizes that the gig is up, and it was funny, and I was drunk. One of the things that I love about this is that Gaiman goes to no effort whatsoever to try and write it in a traditional style of verse or speech or translation or anything like that. He's made his own translation, and it's done in completely modern language. And I think that's one of the real strong points of this entire book. It makes it a lot more accessible for the general reader who hasn't read any of his work or who isn't familiar with Norse mythology inside and out. It's extremely accessible. If I remember correctly, when I first got this book, I'm pretty sure I read it in one sitting. Now, granted, as I said, I'm familiar with the source material, but it's so simply readable that you can read it like a novel, or you can sit and break it down like I'm spending my afternoon doing today. And I thank you all so much for coming out to enjoy this with me. And please, any thoughts you might have, drop them down in the chat, or if you're watching this afterwards, Drop them in the comment section down below. I read and respond to every comment that's sent to me. And I'd like to know what everybody thinks. So Thor threatens Loki because he stole Sif's hair. Which, by the way, we'll get into the whole Thor Sif Loki thing a bit later in this book. But yeah, Thor does look good in a wig and a veil. We'll actually get into some cross-dressing and transgender stuff today, Josh. So I hope you're looking forward to that. But basically, Thor says, you're going to fix this, or I'm going to break every bone in your body every day. So that's pretty intense. And so Loki comes up with the idea, hey, I can get the dwarfs to, I'll get the dwarfs to make her some hair. And Thor's like, okay, well, this is your one chance. Go do it. And Loki clambers to his feet and hurries away before they can break any more bones. So he goes to Svartalfheim, and this part I'm actually going to read verbatim because one of the intriguing things to me about Loki. Oh, hi, Sasuke. Good to see you. One of the really intriguing things about Loki that I've always found intriguing anyway is he's a trickster god. And trickster gods have a common theme and element to them, just like sky gods do, just like fertility goddesses do. There's a common theme with these deities in general across all sorts of pantheons and mythologies and legendariums. So I'm going to read this verbatim because I think it's really important. There's an outstanding motif of trickster gods creating a problem and then they come fix it. And sometimes they fix it because they're really clever. And sometimes they aren't clever enough that their fix keeps them out of trouble, which we'll see later. But so to read this verbatim, good thing I'm not monetized. Loki went to their underground forge. Hello, sons of Vivaldi. I've asked around, and people here tell me that Brock and Airtree, his brother, are the greatest dwarf craftsmen that have ever been, said Loki. No, said one of the sons of Vivaldi. It's us. We're the greatest craftsmen there are. I'm sure that Brock and Airtree can make treasures as good as those you can. Lies, said the tallest of the sons of Vivaldi. I wouldn't trust those fumble-fingered incompetents to shoe a horse. The smallest and wisest of the sons of Vivaldi simply shrugged. Whatever they make, we could do better. I hear that they've challenged you, said Loki. 3 treasures. The gods of the Aesir will judge who made the best treasure. Oh, and by the way, one of the treasures you make needs to be hair. Ever-growing, perfect golden hair. Brilliant. Loki, he can always crawl himself out of the big pit that he digs himself. Except when he can't. And yeah, there's a certain, I think, basic satisfaction that we have with someone who can trick everybody. But on the same note, being people, we've probably been tricked before, and there's a certain delight we get out of that type of person getting their comeuppance. Yes, Sasuke pretty much puts it best. He's too smart for his own good. Yeah, he outsmarts himself pretty often. And by the way, a few of those names that I read in those last few paragraphs, if you've been watching American Gods in season 2, you may recognize a couple of those names because that's what they do. Excuse me. So we go on, and one of my favorite lines that Gaiman writes in this book: Loki looked as guileless as he could, which is amazingly guileless. And this is when he goes to the other groups of dwarves. And what he does is he sets them up and he says that, oh, hey, well, they challenged you. He sets this all up in the background. And it's really cool because this is the type of thing Loki does. This is the type of thing trickster gods do. They play on other people's vanity. They play on other people's cupidity, so on and so forth. And I really I like how they do this. So he goes to the other dwarfs, which are Brock and Ivaldi, I'm sorry, not Brock and Ivaldi. It's Yuri. By the way, if anybody took German, feel free to correct my pronunciation. I took no German. I worked for German people for 7 years and still can't speak any of it, except for Guten Tag and Willkommen and Gemütlichkeit. So my German's awful. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I do my best. And I think these might actually be the Scandinavian names, not the German names. Regardless, that whole part of Europe, I'm not good at those languages. My mouth doesn't pinch in the right manner, and I never took a single freaking class. But so Brock knows that something's going on. And he knows that Loki really needs him. Yeah, I can say Jägermeister too, Josh. Definitely Jägermeister, Bärenjäger, Rumpermensch. I probably just said a whole lot about myself. But so Brock knows that something's going on. And he's like, okay, well, I want you to wager something, Loki. And Loki, oh yeah, sure. I want your head. Now we'll get to Loki's cleverness in a little while. But if we win the contest, we get your head, Loki. There are lots of things going on in that head of yours, and I have no doubt that Itri could make a wonderful device out of it. A thinking machine, perhaps. Or an inkwell. Like, that's such a backhanded compliment. I freaking love it. So, Loki is like, okay, I mean, he has to agree to this, because if he doesn't, he's going to go back to Asgard, and Thor's going to kick the shit out of him every day. For, like, the rest of eternity. So, he lets the other three brothers do their thing, having faith in them. But Brock and Itri, he decides to mess with them to make sure that they lose. because he doesn't want to lose his head. Now, Brock is pumping the forge, and Itri's doing all the work. And Loki turns into a fly. Huge fly, bigger than a horsefly. And first, while he's working on the first piece, he bites him on the hand. But he doesn't budge. And he makes this beautiful golden boar. Second, Brock pumps the bellows. Itri leaves the room. Have to keep those bellows going at exactly the same rate and pace and everything. And even though Loki bites him on the back of the neck, he still does it. Then he's the third one. Well, the second gift, was ring. And this is very important if you get into Wagner. The ring cycle, Odin's ring figures very prominently into it. It's an arm ring. So you wear it like up here. And it's made of pure gold. And if I remember correctly, every 7 days it can reproduce itself 7 times. And keep doing so in perpetuum. So, this is a pretty cool gift. It's called Drapnir, which means the dripper. Sorry, my notes are not quite as concise as they normally are this week. I love how Gaiman slips in. I mean, this is totally like traditional mythology in this sentence. Itri picked up an ingot of pig iron, bigger than any ingot that the black fly, who was Loki, had ever seen before, and he hefted it into the forge. It's just the way that the language is used, I think, is really great. That it feels like you're reading mythology, and that goes back to what I said, whether it was written the other day or whether it was written over 1,000 years ago. It has that mythological element to it. But so this time, while he's forging it, Loki's like, oh shit, I got to make sure this doesn't work out. So he flies up, and while Brock's pumping the bellows, he keeps stinging him in the eyelids. Like, I remember reading this part, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that would be awful. It would be so awful. But he keeps stinging him, and then finally Brock, his eyes are full of blood. He can't even see. Wipes the sweat and blood away from his eyes, but that one little moment makes the next gift not come out perfectly. The handle's a little too short. It's a hammer. It's made as a gift for Thor. And its name is Mjolnir. Now Brock stares at Loki with swollen eyelids. Because Loki comes back and he's like, oh, hey, you guys got all the gifts ready? And he's like, I'm looking forward to cutting off your head. It got personal. So in Asgard, all the gods are sitting on their thrones. They're waiting. And the first gift that is presented to Odin. It is Gungnir, which is his spear. Now, once again, for those of you watching American Gods in season 2, the powers of the spear come very important. Because spear will always find its mark. And just as important, an oath taken on the spear is unbreakable. They present the next gift. And this is the head of golden hair. Sif puts it on, and her hair is even more beautiful than it had been. And it latches right to her head, and it's pure gold. And everyone's pretty impressed. And third gift looks like a little folded up cloth. And they give it to Frey. And he's like, okay, it's cloth. Like, no, wait. This is Skubladnir. Once again, if my pronunciation's wrong, correct me. And it is a ship that unfolds from a cloth. It becomes a ship that always the wind is behind. It goes exactly where it's supposed to. I mean, that'd be pretty handy. I mean, when you think about it. Oh, hey, Lady Laura Dan Starfall joined us. Welcome, LOD. Always good to see you. So now we get to Brock's gifts. First, he gives Odin the arm ring. Oh, and I'm sorry, it wasn't 7. It's every 9th night, 8 golden arm rings will drip from it. Excuse me. Allergies are really bad right now because the weather keeps fluctuating so much. So my nose is always itching. My apologies. And then they give Frey his boar. It's called Gillenbersti, the golden bristled one. Now Loki's thinking to himself, oh, come on, the ship was at least as impressive as an unstoppable boar. And then, finally, from beneath the cloth, Sasuke, yes, 9 is very important in this mythology. Very, very important. 9's the number used across the board. In fact, I don't even know why 7 came into my head. But he pulls out Mjolnir, which is a hammer for Thor. And yeah, the handle's a little short, but first of all, it's unbreakable. It doesn't matter how hard you hit something with it, the hammer will always be undamaged. And this shows you, this next paragraph really shows you Thor in a nutshell. Thor looked interested. He had already broken a great many weapons over the years, normally by hitting things with them. Like, yeah, Thor's thick as a post. It's really hilarious. If you throw the hammer, it'll never miss. It'll always come back to you. You can change the size of the hammer and it'll grow, which, if anyone doesn't think that Thor touching his hammer makes it grow, is a double entendre, then you're really missing something. Because, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And so all of a sudden, you know, the gods are comparing the gifts from one and the gifts from the other. And Thor doesn't give a shit about the fact that his wife got hair back. No, he's like, oh, my hammer. I have a big hammer to play with. Thor smash. And so Brock wins the contest. And he says, well, Loki, I'm going to take your head. And Loki says, no, I'll ransom it. And Brock's like, we're dwarves. We make treasures. You have nothing you can offer us. So then Loki runs off. But Thor catches him. And he brings him back. And now it comes down to it. He's going to get his head cut off. But Loki, and this is why being a trickster god and a liar and a thief, he's also quite the lawyer. He says, of course, you can, of course, cut off my head, and I appeal to the mighty Odin here, if you cut off any of my neck, you're violating the terms of our agreement, which promised you my head, and my head only. And Loki's like, okay, he's right. And Brock's like, shit, I can't cut off your head without cutting his neck. And Loki thinks he's pulled it out here. But then Brock comes up and he whispers in Odin's ear. He's like, hey, I gotta get some sort of satisfaction from this. And Odin's like, yeah, that sounds great. Go ahead. So he sews his lips shut. Which, for those of you who've read American Gods, hasn't been mentioned in the show yet. But for those of you who've read American Gods, that's actually brought up a couple of times. And the way that book is written, it's actually a bit of a clue as to where things are going to go. So, any thoughts on that from anybody? Oh, and by the way, I love how this chapter's finished. That was the thing about Loki. You resented him even when you were most grateful, and you were grateful to him even when you hated him the most. So if anybody has anything they would like to share about this fourth chapter, please do so in chat. I will be back in just one moment. Because I have to go check on something, but I will be right back. Okay, my house is not catching on fire. Yeah, pretty much, Josh. I mean, You know, Loki's his blood brother. Doesn't mean he has to like him all the time. I mean, I have a sibling I really don't care for at all, and I try to avoid. Lives closer to me than any of my other siblings, and I see him once a year, maybe. But you know, yeah, exactly. I wouldn't mind somebody sewing his lips shut, but I'm kind of mean. Yes, it is good that my house is not on fire. uh, so doesn't look like anybody really has any questions. Lady Laura, I love listening to you talk about this fascinating book. Well, thank you. It's extremely flattering. I love flatterers. So you have the audiobook with Gaiman reading it, which really cool. And something that I'm thinking of doing down the way, if maybe I can have somebody to talk to about it. Which, by the way, I should have a guest next week, so you won't just have to listen to me. You'll be listening to somebody very special who has some really cool insight into a lot of stuff. But the audiobook, so something I'm looking at possibly doing after this, Coraline, which I'm sure a ton of people have seen the movie. I'm not sure how many people have read it, but it was, a lot of people don't know this, it was originally released before it was in print as an audiobook. In fact, that's how Gaiman wrote it. He wrote it to be an audiobook, and then he decided, oh, hey, I'll do a print version as well. Um, and it was pretty cool because he was doing a tour that was like a combination of lecture and this was right after American Gods came out, to a lecture about the importance of mythology in modern civilization. And I got to see him at Northern Kentucky University, and he read, before it was published, the first, I believe it was 3 chapters of Coraline, and totally sold me on the audiobook thing. I'm not a huge audiobook person myself, just because I don't necessarily process information in that manner the best. I do better when I'm reading, especially if I have my handy dandy highlighter and pen. For all of you people who call me a book defacer, sorry, I'm proud of it. I don't do it to any of the ones that would have any resale value, so there's that. But yeah, so Coraline's probably going to be the next project. If anybody out there in the chat or anybody who's coming on afterwards would like to possibly be my co-host to discuss Coraline, then please get in touch with me. All my social media stuff should be down in the description below, and you're welcome to private message me on YouTube. So, that being said, if nobody has any thoughts or anything about that last myth that they'd like to share, any more thoughts they'd like to share. Oh, Lady Laura Dane, no, the audio never disappoints me. I love audiobooks, especially when they're read by the author. But oh, Lauren, I don't think we get to that story until next week. By the way, welcome, Lauren's Corner. Great friend of the channel. But no, I enjoy audiobooks, LOD. I just I don't comprehend and compress the information quite as well. So there's that. But yeah, so we'll get to this next Loki-centric chapter. And this is, sorry, the Master Builder. Now the gods are all concerned that they need to build a wall. I'll let any of you Americans take that in for a second. Okay. So they need to build a wall to keep out the giants and the trolls. But they can't build this wall. And a stranger comes up. Sorry, I'm reading the chat as I'm talking about this. And the stranger says, I can build you a wall. So high the tallest giant couldn't climb it, so thick that the strongest troll couldn't batter through it. I can build it so well by placing stone upon stone that not an ant could find space enough to crawl through it. I'll build it for you, and it will last 1,000 years. And the gods are like, oh, okay. Well, what do you want in return? Because he says he can build this in 3 seasons. And up in this part of the world, you really only have 3 seasons. You have summer and winter. And he's like, well, tomorrow's the first day of winter. Give me all the winter, all the summer, and all of the next winter. I'll have it built for you. And I say, okay, what do you want for this? Well, first, Freya, I want her hand in marriage. And Freya is the most beautiful goddess of all the goddesses. She's one of the Vanir. She's like just this absolutely, apparently gorgeous woman. Another one with golden hair. They, you know, hey, up there in Scandinavia, they have a thing for blonde hair and blue eyes. You know, just saying. Not my necessarily cup of tea. Not that if you have blonde hair and blue eyes, you're not a beautiful person. Just they're pretty obsessive about it up there. And then he says, I want the hand of Freya. I also want the sun that shines in the sky by day, and I want the moon that gives light at night. That's all. Now the guys realize they need their wall, especially because Thor's away. He's off like Thoring around, doing his Thor thing, which is pretty much just like being kind of dumb. Oh, Lauren, you're reading Virginia Woolf right now. Very good. I do love some Virginia Woolf. uh, I'm sorry, I keep getting distracted here. But I'm trying to just stay in touch with all of you folks. Is Thor the Victorian of the Celestial family? Oh. He's like Victorian with a little more of a sense of right and wrong. But yeah, that's pretty good comparison. It's actually a really good comparison. So they're like, okay, hey, let us discuss this. You know, let's figure this out. So the stranger goes and waits outside, and he goes to find food and water for his horse named Svaldefari. like I said, my German pronunciation's bad. Like, it comes out of my mouth, and I know it's bad while it's coming out of my mouth. But so they have their conversation, and they're all like, "Oh, well, yeah, I don't know what we're going to do. We don't have a wall, and dumbass is out hunting giants, and who knows when the hell he'll be back because he's got his new hammer, and you know that's what he does, and he's bang shit up." Oh, Morley, I actually have a whole theory about that I wrote something about, and I'm just looking for somebody to put it up on their channel. Uh, I don't know. About comparisons between Norse mythology and uh, the Song of Ice and Fire. Um, yeah, so I've got somebody in mind. I'm going to see, but that question will definitely be answered soon. So all the gods are trying to talk at once, and Freya's like, "Hey, you aren't marrying me off to anybody." Like, "Hey, we need our wall." I mean, especially with Chuckles off doing who knows what. And then there's once again, I love the way that Gaiman speaks. There was a dry cough from the corner of the hall. It was the kind of cough intended to attract attention, and the gods turned to see who'd coughed. They found themselves looking at Loki. And Loki points out, he's like, "You're ignoring some huge things." "Oh, what's that?" "Well, what he's proposing to do is quite impossible. And what he says he can do is an impossible task. I suggest this. We agree to his demands, and to his price, but we set him stiff conditions. He may have no help building the wall, and instead of 3 seasons to build a wall, he has 1. If on the first day of summer the wall is unfinished, and it will be, then we pay him nothing at all." And they're like, "What good will that do us? We won't have a wall." He's like, "Hey, we'll have foundations for one. We can finish it up from there ourselves." He'll work for 6 months unpaid on a full errand. At the end of the 6 months, we'll drive him away. We might even beat him for his presumption. And then we can use whatever he has done so far as the foundations for the wall that we'll complete in the years to come. There's no risk of us losing Freya, let alone the Son of the Moon. And Mexico will pay for it. Exactly. Actually, they're going to build a wall, and the Giants will pay for it. Okay. In fact, he says, "We are going to build a wall, and the Giants are going to pay for it." Sorry, that was an awful impression, but I did my best. So everybody but Freya thinks this is a great, just jolly, grand idea. So they give him the new terms, and he agrees to it. The one thing he asks is that he can use his horse to help him. And they're like, "Hey, that's fair." So the oath is taken on Odin's spear. Keep in mind, anything sworn on Odin's spear is very important. Once again, if you're up to date on American gods, that comes into play. Yeah, exactly, Sasa. They're not the one who has to possibly marry this guy. Well, they're also going to lose the sun and the moon, which means there's no light. So he begins building the wall. The first day, he digs the entire trench all the way around Isgard. They're a little intimidated. Loki's like, oh, no, hey, he still has to build a wall. It's just a trench. So he takes his horse, he goes off with a sledge, and comes back with 20 huge building stones and starts building the wall. Every day, the gods are watching this wall grow and grow and grow. And Loki keeps, he's like, oh, the horse will get tired. Winter's coming. Snows will be deep and thick. There's nothing to worry about. It's all going according to plan. One of the cool things that you notice when you read this is that Gaiman jumps directly from a very traditional and mythological cadence to the cadence that people use in their common speech day to day. And I think that's absolutely awesome. But it keeps growing. The wall keeps growing and growing and growing. And it's getting close to the end. And they're wondering, well, how the hell are we going to do this? Now, he's picking up these stones by himself. The only people who could do that would be a giant. The only person who could do that would be a giant. So they know he's a giant under a glamour. But they swore an oath, and they can't really back out of it. And a really funny line is that Heimdall says, I wish Thor were here. He would know what to do. Thor doesn't know his ass from a fucking hole in the ground, but okay, sure. So they think it's all going to end. I'm sorry, like I said, my notes are awful here. My apologies to everybody. And everybody's like, oh, this is your fault, Loki. And he's like, well, everybody here agreed to it, so it's really not my fault. Frey's like, no, you came up with this. You talked these idiots into it. And I'll see you dead before I leave Asgard. Odin says, this is a result of your poor counsel. You need to fix something. You need to fix it. And Loki says, I don't know what you expect me to do about it. And I love this dialogue that's put in here. I don't expect anything from you. But if this builder succeeds in finishing the wall by the end of tomorrow, then your death will be painful and long. And a bad and shameful death at that. So we go to the next day, and the horse doesn't want to come off to the quarry to dig the stones. And the stranger, the mason, wonders why. And, well, that's because there's a mare running in the wilderness. Now, it just so turns out that this mare is in rut. Or is in heat. Sorry. Stallion's in rut. Mare's in heat. And it kind of drags him off. The master builder's like, screw it. Takes the sledge himself, goes, gets his 10 bricks, because he can only pull 10 himself when he doesn't have the spores. And he's working as fast as he can. They tell him you only have till sundown to get the wall finished. They're all making fun of him, and he says, "You cheated." Everything says, "We've not cheated, no more than you've cheated. Do you think we would let you build a wall if we had known you were a giant?" And then he shows himself for what he really is. Wall or no wall, whatever, he's not getting his payment. But then, hey, Thor's back. And Thor kicks the living shit out of him. And they all thank him, and he says, "Oh, I appreciated that you had some fun ready for me when you got home from the East." Now, Loki, we don't see Loki for a while. Almost a year. When he comes back, it's Loki and a colt. The colt has 8 legs. And, or I'm sorry, well, full. Well, it's colt. Does everybody know the difference between a colt, a foal, and a filly? I'll tell you in a minute here. But the horse grows up to be Sleipnir, which is Odin's horse. And well, you just don't talk about you don't have to talk about how this horse came to be when you're around Loki. You probably wouldn't really appreciate it. And the story ends. Loki would go out of his way to make your life unpleasant if he heard you talking about how he lured Vivaldi away from its master and how he rescued the gods from his own bad idea. Loki nursed his resentments. And that is the story of how the gods got their wall. Now, I was going to do 3 chapters today, but I think to do 2 is better, just because it's me waffling, and hopefully next week I should have a guest. So we should be doing at least chapters 6, 7, and 8, possibly 9. I'd like to answer any questions or thoughts anybody has. The difference is all 3 are horses under the age of 3. A foal is just a baby, genderless term. Colt would be a boy, and a filly would be a girl. Lauren says she has 3 different essays, 3 different 3,000 word essays to do in a couple of weeks. Yeah, I remember those days. It's not very fun. Beryl and Josh, Odd and the Frost Giants. I'm not familiar. Could you elaborate? How am I setting into my new place? Pretty well. I have a lot of things that I'm just trying to get rid of because it's much smaller than my old space. Mostly collectibles, which I'm not trying to promote myself or anything like this, but I have a ton of collectibles I'm trying to get rid of. If somebody is interested in toy collectibles, please private message me. All my social media stuff's down in the description, or it will be as soon as this video finishes. And yeah, let me know. A lot of action figures still in their cases and stuff like that. Otherwise, I have somebody who works on eBay who's going to. I just need to get all this stuff out of here. I have unpacked boxes like all over my apartment. Yeah, I miss the bookshelves are all over the place. Actually, I'll be doing that on my channel once I'm completely unpacked and set up, Lauren. I'll be doing a tour because Mackenzie, quite some time ago, asked me to do a book tour of my place, and I will be. Uh, oh, Lauren, the view. You're just seeing the inside. The view is fracking awesome. Uh, well, probably too late. But I'm right on the lake side. So I view the lake. I see ducks and geese and 2 swans every morning. Lady Laura Dane, yes, I still live in Ohio. In fact, I'm still in the Cincinnati area. I'm going to be here for about another year, and then I'm looking at moving north. No, I don't sell things on eBay. I'd much rather somebody with a bigger customer following do so, and I'm paying them a commission. I'm lazy American enough that I'd rather pay somebody to do something that I could do myself, just for the convenience of not having to do it. I'll be completely open and upfront about that. Yeah, well, Lauren, I'll get you a photo from my balcony that when it's light out, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, that was pretty anticlimactic, wasn't it? So does anybody have any thoughts on Loki or Loki stories, trickster god stories, this book in general? Oh, you think Loki can be compared to Littlefinger? Okay. Oh, that's a tough one. Um, don't get me wrong, Loki's malicious. Don't get me wrong, Loki is self-serving. But on the same note, Loki uses. I mean, he's a true trickster deity. He helps as much as he hinders, till the end, which we'll eventually get to. Well, he creates his own problems and then he fixes them. Yeah, it's. I agree with you, Beryl and Josh. It's like Gaiman says in the introduction to this book. Loki is complicated, and you know, if you look, I mean, sometimes you have clever trickster gods, such as Prometheus. But even Prometheus got himself in some trouble. I mean, I could use a new liver every day, but I don't know if I'd want it eaten out by an eagle to get the benefit of that. And even Prometheus, who is usually clever, sometimes outsmarts himself. Then you have the opposite end of the spectrum. You have Coyote and Southwestern American mythology. And Coyote's so dumb he buys shit from a shit farmer and lose money on it. Sasuke. That's a really cool question. I forget, is Loki the god of anything in particular, or is he just the trickster? The okay, the realms of power of the Norse deities are a lot more ambiguous than they are with, say, a lot of your Mediterranean deities, such as Greek, Roman, Babylonian, Egyptian gods. Like what job everybody does is a little more ambiguous. Um, Loki doesn't have Odin's the god of wisdom and Thor's the god of thunder, but it's a lot more ambiguous where people's powers cross. Um, so plus Loki isn't a god; he's a giant. He just happens to live in Asgard because he's Odin's blood brother. But Loki's not a god, so that's why I don't think any real sphere is ever assigned to it. He just he's the smartest. He's the most clever. He helps the gods get out of pretty much any bad situation, especially the ones that he usually caused in the first place. I mean, but that's a constant um, trait of trickster deities. Oh, hey, Peter Griffin, good to see you. No, I've never played God of War 4. I think I played the first one when it first came out, but besides that, I haven't. Um, as much as I love gaming, I've pretty much become an entirely retro gamer just because I think it's absolute bullshit that you need to pay for extra content to have a complete game. It's kind of like I'm not sure where I'm going with all these streaming services coming out. The things that I want to watch, but honestly, a lot of them I'm just going to wait for it to come out on DVD or Blu-ray. Um, I wish I would have watched The Mandalorian last night, which I'm sorry for anybody in Europe who wasn't able to. I didn't watch it. I wanted to watch it, but I'm not going to spend an extra $15 a month or whatever for another streaming service. I'm not. I have Prime. Prime's worth it to me because just the shipping benefits are worth it. But yeah, I don't, and I feel pretty much the same way about a lot of games that come out nowadays. Like, um, for one thing, I think they're kind of like, okay, I hope this doesn't get divisive, but it's kind of like the last few seasons of Game of Thrones became more spectacle than substance, and I feel like the Elder Scrolls games have gotten there. I don't think Skyrim or Oblivion were remotely comparable to Morrowind as the quality of an enjoyable game. It's just pretty pictures, killing shit, in a like led by the nose like a hog storyline, and it was quite boring. Um, Oh, Sasuke, dusting off the NES. I'm actually, I've been thinking of doing a Zelda playthrough. It'll be the first time in years. Um, oh, Lady Laura Dane, I'm just the opposite. I hate binging stuff. I prefer watching things week to week, but I'm not going to spend $15 a month for one TV show from Disney Plus. Like, I'll just wait until it comes out on DVD or Blu-ray, and then I will binge it. But it'll cost me like $30. I like the once a week format. I don't like that it's becoming a formula where everybody has their own channel. There's a comment back here earlier. Lady Laura Dane said he's a fixer. I assume you're talking about Loki. Are you talking from the like? Are you saying he fixes things, or fixer in the criminal underworld sense? Because I think the second one's pretty true. The first one's pretty true as well. I've always thought of Odin kind of as like like someone in the mob who a racketeer who sets up protection rackets. Yes, SK, I agree. He rigs things, but he sets up protection rackets. It's hey, take care of this, and we'll make sure that nobody messes with you. Like, creates a problem, and then has to be the one who comes up with the solution. It's well, yeah, Lady Lord. Like I said, I agree with you there. I think he figures things out when people have problems, but most of those problems he created in the first place. Like, that's kind of the amusing irony of Loki's character. But is everyone enjoying reading this book, discussing it, talking about it? Yeah, taking the hair of Thor's wife. Uh, Now, Gaiman doesn't really get into it in here, but there are probably a few other things that Loki took from Thor's wife that are implied in the Eddas if you read them. Never stated outright, but implied. Definitely implied. Because, I mean, seriously, if you're dating that idiot who needs to rub his hammer to get it bigger, you might go like looking for other fish in the sea when he's off giant hunting for a full season. Just saying. And yes, I am not joking. That is one of the powers of Thor's hammer. If he rubs it, it gets bigger. You can't make this shit up. I pick on Thor so much. I'll try not to when we get in some more Thor centric stories, but yeah, I do have to say, for those of you who are up to date in American Gods, in season 2, the way he's portrayed, I think, is really sympathetic. And even I'm a Thor basher, just because, like, I don't think of Marvel Thor. When I think of Thor, I think of like Norse mythology Thor, and he's dumb as a post. And I try and be kind of sympathetic, but it's hard. But yeah, if any of you have seen that episode yet, if not, please check it out. And right here on the channel, there's analysis for all of those. Thor's hammer. How much do you want to bet? There's a sex toy available at Babeland or etc. called Thor's hammer. You know what kind of toy I mean. Sasuke, I'm sure they sell it at all of your favorite, anyone's favorite neo-Nazi white supremacist Aryan Nation hammer skin shop. I'm sure somebody could find Thor's hammer there. Well, adjustable size, yeah, I'd go with, but I do think that would just fly off the shelves at any store that caters to Fourth Rikers. Oh, Thor's hammer. Yeah, I gotta buy one of those. Oh, I'll buy one for my boyfriend too. He's gonna hang it on his wall or whatever. So next week, I believe I will be having a special guest. We'll be covering chapters 6, 7, and 8, possibly 9. I have to talk to said guest before that. But I want to thank everybody who came out here tonight. Sasuke, always good to see you. Bear Allen Josh, Peter Griffin, Lady Laura Dane Starfall, Lawrence Corner, who else was here? Maura Lee, happy birthday, Maura Lee. Happy birthday, Miss Maura Lee. Happy birthday to you. And if I miss anybody, I terribly apologize. I think I caught everybody. Oh, Katrin Harding, yes. So, I'm going to say goodnight to all of you. And I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday night. New music should be up sometime this weekend. And I hope you enjoy that. By the way, please, if you have time, in the comments down below, after this is over, can you just let me know, do you prefer me releasing playlists on Friday so you can enjoy them over the weekend, or on Monday so you can listen to them during your workday? Please, if you have the time, just drop that in the comment section down below. Also, for anybody who's watching this afterwards, leave your thoughts about any questions that were asked or anything that was discussed in the comments down below as well. While you're down there, like, share, subscribe, hit all those good buttons. And I hope to see all of you again very soon. If you'd like to see me Friday, I will be, as usual, on the Cylon Johns with my co-host and very good friend, Johnny B. Crazy. So I hope to see you then. In the meantime, everybody have a wonderful evening, and please believe.